are on lesson 9. Found out after services on Wednesday, Chuck told me, said we were supposed to be on lesson 7, and so here I am talking about lesson 8, and you guys were ready for lesson 7, which explained why it was pretty quiet on last Wednesday. So we may go back and pick up lesson 7. We're probably just going to skip it. It's about counting the cost. I think we can just move on and get out of this book what we want to without talking about that one. So tonight we're going to talk about member involvement in evangelism. You ever had one of those days that all day long you're just like, oh man, just all day long, just something. And that was my day today. And it continued when I pulled in my drive. And the last couple of weeks, I've been taking my book to work. I carve out a couple hours in the day, about an hour in the day, to go through, make some final notes, and look over it again. And anybody want to guess where my book is? It's on my desk at work. So I pulled in the driveway tonight, and I'm like, oh man, the book is in my desk. So I got a spare one, which has no notes in it. So this would be one of those great nights. If you guys have a lot to talk about, we'll just listen to you talk instead of me. But I do know a lot of what I was going to talk about, because I like this chapter. And there's some things that we definitely want to talk about. So we look at, 2 Timothy 2:2, and that simple verse that's going to start us out. Paul writes to Timothy, "And what you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to faithful men who will be able to teach others also." So the words that Paul wrote to Timothy is kind of what we want to talk about tonight, is how do we take what we've learned and teach it to others? And this lesson talks a little bit about this. So I have a question I want to start out with. Has anybody been through a class on how to teach people? Has anybody ever sat through an official class dedicated to how you teach other people the gospel? So a couple. I was sitting there thinking, I don't remember. If I did, it's been years ago. I should ask Angie before I got here. Have we ever sat through something like that? Because she might remember, but I don't remember sitting through classes that taught us how to actually teach people, how to reach them. And so I was thinking about that as we started this. Now, was there, those of you that have been through it, was it a long class? Like, was it short? Was it 5 lessons, 1 lesson? What was it about that class what did it cover? Either you want to mention what was covered? No? Okay, so neither one of them, there's 2 people raised their hand, neither one of them want to talk about actually what was covered. So, I mean, it's not something we've really done really good at. And so I got to thinking about this. And so what I want to do is I want to talk about a concept tonight. And it's basically going to be a funnel that's going to be not symmetrical. So we have this funnel, and I really think I want to look at this in kind of a step. And we're going to call this, for lack of a better term, a conversion funnel. Now, anybody's familiar with sales, you could also call this a sales funnel. But I really think that in this, if we look at how people are converted, the odds of us walking up to somebody or being like, Philip and finding an Ethiopian eunuch and walking up to them and baptizing them immediately, converting them, that is highly unlikely in today's society. A lot of the people that we talk to have some religious affiliation, some religious association. They know something about this. Very seldom do we find someone that knows nothing about religion at all. So if we look at this funnel, and let's just say there's 2, 4, 5 steps. So this down here is conversion at the bottom. So what would be some good practical steps to consider? What would be a successful first step? And I know what I want these to be, and so we're going to try and get them what I want them to be, but I don't want to just tell you what I think the good steps are. What would be a good first step? Okay. I like that as step 2. But it's a great step. Okay. I think that contributes to every one of them. This is real fun when it's in your brain, and I'm trying to make you guys get. But there is a simple first step. Make contact. Yeah, make contact or a basically a simple discussion. I can't spell, and I use weird capital letters. So if you can't read that, I mean, that doesn't surprise many. But step 1, you just want to have a basic, simple conversation. I think that's a great first step. So in this, if I was able to have just this little simple conversation, just a very high-level surface about spirituality and religion. Because what does that do? What does that do in this whole process?
Curiosity or another way of leading into a conversation.
Yeah, it could create some curiosity, build some common ground. Because then, just like Susan said, we start building a relationship. So then it becomes, you're really nurturing that initial conversation. That way you can kind of get to know each other, build a little bit more commonality, a little bit more connection. So then what would be
with that simple discussion, it's like and then you know where they're at, and a lot of times you talk to somebody and you hear them say, you need to start where they're at. Mm-hmm. And so you need to find out where they're at religiously or how they, so I think that you have a simple discussion just to see, again, where.
Seems like a great next step, Jock. Discover where they are.
One of the things in that simple discussion at first is if you can find a common ground, something you two agree on to start. That's always a good place. And it's like with the person that I'm discussing with, we both agree that every week has a first day. In a discussion of the Lord's Supper.
Okay. Gotcha. And a lot of times when we start having conversations, it's not hard to find spiritual common ground with someone. I mean, because a lot of people have a base understanding or a base belief in God. So we can find a good solid ground. Then we build this relationship, and while we do that, we discover, where they are. Where do they stand spiritually? So, and to do that, we have to just have a little bit deeper relationship, a little bit deeper conversation. So then what would be a next step?
I would want to know if they believe that this is God's word.
Okay.
And can we use that as our standard?
So almost define authority. That's not even close. But anyway, It's better when I look at it and know it's spelled wrong, but I'm not sure how to fix it. So if we can take that and define some authority and establish some truths. Here's some base ground that we all agree on. And we have to agree that on, Scripture is the ultimate authority. Because if there's a, man creed or a lot of, I kind of believe the Bible. I believe in religion, but I don't really believe in the Bible. Then there's a lot of challenges in that. There's a lot of challenges in that statement. So then after we define authority, build a framework, what's next? What's left? Okay. Determine needs or determine steps. Where do we go from here? Is kind of the next framework. So, but if you look at this, it's kind of a funnel, because if you look at this, so you're going to have simple conversations with a lot of people, and then you're going to build relationships with fewer of them. Then you're going to have deeper talks with fewer of them, more talks with fewer of them, and by the time you get down to the bottom, there's less people that are interested. But if we truly believe, like Paul told Titus, it's up to us to go out and share this with others. If we're not ever putting people in the funnel, we're never going to get anything out of the funnel. Now, this is marketing 101, basically. So does this make sense?
It makes sense, for one. I think it's a good framework. I would say it's important not to get too rigid in terms of, okay, check my cheat sheet. What step are we on with this person? Because someone might come in at very different levels as far as what they understand. People come in at different levels as far as how close your relationship may already be with them. I didn't clarify when Chuck finally got to me with the mic, and I should have said more. When it comes to determining a person's needs, the end goal is you have something to offer. How are you going to show that person that you have something to offer that's going to address the thing that they are lacking? Because if you start with, hey, I've got this great thing, baptism, and they're like, well, I've got this problem. How does that solve my problem? I need money. How does being baptized help my problem with needing money? Or, I've got addictions. How does being baptized fix that? So making sure that the offer, the solution that you're offering is actually going to address the ways in which they hurt. Because if it's not going to solve the thing that's really causing them pain right now, they're not interested in that. They want the pain to stop. So how do you fix that? And so that's where, the path you take, the actual things that you might say to a person, it can vary a lot. There was another point I wanted to make earlier, and I don't know where it fits in on the funnel, but I think there's many, many people out there where there's work that needs to be done in undoing a lot of things that people already assume, or sort of tearing down the assumptions that are already there. You might talk to someone who says, well, I don't want to be part of any church. Look at all the abuses and look at all the evils that the church has done. Sexual abuse of children in the church, that happens all over the place. I don't want to be part of that. Well, baked into that statement, you now see that this person has a lot of underlying assumptions that are going to have to be worked on. So maybe that's part of discover where they are. Find out what they think they already know, and how true is it? How true is it of the Lord's church? Start working on those points of contention.
A lot of good points in that. Because there's not a checklist. It's like, okay, I had the simple conversation. Now let me go to, lesson B, lesson C, lesson D. I don't know of any foolproof method. I mean, if we took somebody who knew nothing about organized religion, that's a simple step. But yeah, there's a lot in where people are that has to be dealt with. We have to understand that this is a complex discussion. And there's a lot of complexity in people's lives. So, politics and religion are two kind of taboo things in the world. As you don't talk about politics or religion because it is very personal stuff and it can lead to challenging discussions. So we have to work on how can we have these discussions in a productive manner. Because the last thing we want to do is just, especially if they have a challenging belief or challenging thought about the church because of the way somebody treated them, acted, just misconceived notions. We don't want to further do damage to that. So we have to really be very intentional about what we do. And we have to be very intentional in the way we behave. Because sometimes we may say one thing, but we don't know who's watching us, and we may behave a different way shortly after that. There was an experience I had a couple years ago. I was teaching a breakout at one of these conferences that I go to. And what we talked about in this breakout was one thing. And then I was having a discussion. It became a heated discussion with a guy. And one of the people sitting next to us was in my breakout. And he said, I got a question. He said, what you talked about here, it was not consistent with what you're doing now. And I was like, wow, that's 100% true. I didn't realize that. And so then I apologized to both of them, and we had a great conversation after that. But it's sometimes in the heat of the moment when you get in a contentious situation, sometimes you let your emotions get the best of you, and you don't always behave the right way. And so that's why we have to be very, very, very intentional that while we're looking at taking this message that's given to us to the world, we have to be very careful in what we do. Chuck, do you have a comment?
Well,
A summary?
Audra brought to my attention, it was actually kind of my conversion, because I came out of the Catholic Church. And when I came here, I was just looking for the truth, to understand the Bible. And when I sat down and studied with a couple of the fellas from here, some of them thought, well, we need to teach against Catholicism. And that wasn't it. I had nothing, I was, not a practicing Catholic at that time or had no issue. In fact, that was the reason why I was looking for something else, because I knew that Catholicism was not in the Bible. I mean, they were doing a lot of things that were, and so again, I think it's where you need to find out where that person is, even though they may have some kind of background. But again, it's just.
Yeah, I thought about you and the conversations we've had, and I thought about my own journey as I was putting this together, because for me, it started with a simple conversation. I had a religious background, but this was exactly, the path that I walked down. It started as a simple conversation, and then built a deeper relationship, and then just further developed into, okay, I know what I need to do, and it just became part of who I am. Yeah.
Just remember going over the years that it seemed like for a while, how many people can we get a Bible correspondence course? We can get that course into the, and that's was the beginning of the funnel. And I think that it's not for those things. Bible correspondence course is great, but those kind of things are kind of like a program thing. You know, marketing, you're starting at the top of the funnel, you're basically, you don't care who it is. It's like a cattle drive, and we don't want to make people feel like this is a cattle drive. We're trying to get a lot of people, you know, into the funnel to get them started. Now they may sift themselves out, but yeah, but it doesn't. Don't want to have it like, you know, well, you know, we'll give you 3 weeks, and if you don't, you know, go next, or you know that, you know, we're building relationships, whether they want to continue that or not. We need to, you know, we still need to hold everybody that's coming in the top of the funnel in a valuable position. And so it was, you know, but I just remembered for years, you know, the Bible correspondence courses, when, you know, are a good tool, but it seemed like our job was trying to get as many of those things pass out as we could.
Jack's getting his workout. Yeah, because I mean, although the Bible correspondence course is a great tool, but yeah, it's not hey, let's see if we can send out, you know, 100 of these. How many of these can we get in people's hands? Because that is probably less effective than a personal touch. Yes, Joy.
Well, like what Dan said, and I think so will truly having a genuine interest, because someone who's genuinely interested at a sell job. We don't want to do a sell job. And the second thing is having respect for that person, even if you wouldn't have been living the way they are, and thereby setting yourself up as a superior authority, will not anywhere.
Yeah, I think Wilson did a great job on that Sunday. I really liked his Sunday night lesson. You know, how did Jesus talk to people? Now, I really liked the concept, because you see, when Jesus met different people, he found them where they were and was able to help them. And I think really that's a lot of this, getting us engaged. And I was really, really curious when I started out and asked, how many people have ever been really taught how to reach people? And I don't feel that we've done a good job at doing that, because it's not an easy conversation to bring up sometimes. Because there are concerns or challenges. Sometimes just living your life right, people will ask. Sometimes we have to plant seeds. I mean, it goes back to the sower. I mean, and I was thinking about that when I was putting this together, and thinking about this afternoon. The sower just went out scattering seed, and that's really what we should be doing. And just some simple questions. I think it was, if I remember right, I think it was Paul Brewer, one of the lessons he did here when he's talking about their outreach, is sometimes they just ask just some simple questions, you know, that are designed to possibly pique an interest or get people to talk. Because that's the ultimate thing with being able to share what we have with people, is we have to get them to know that A, we're interested and willing to talk, and B, we have some information. And a lot of times, the less organized, the more organic this is, the more successful it is. Because if you're standing there in a booth, if you're standing there with like a table and a banner, you know, says, you know, got church questions, ask us, free Bibles. I mean, people will go out of their way to walk away from you, because they've been down that road before. And the thing that comes into a lot of people's mind is, oh no, there's a bunch of religious fanatics that want to sign me up for a correspondence course. At least that's what would come through my mind. I enjoy stopping and talking to them, but I mean, that's because, that's just who we are. Any other thoughts? So what are some practical ways to do this? What are some practical things? There's a term called guerrilla marketing. Does everybody know what guerrilla marketing is? It's not telling the world we have gorillas. That's not what it is. It's very simple, one-on-one marketing. Welcome packets, business cards, small things that just pique people's interest that they can take with them is guerrilla marketing. So in the world, ink pens are guerrilla marketing. If you ever get an ink pen that says, so-and-so insurance company, that's guerrilla marketing because they're hoping at some point you'll see that and call them. Shirts, ball caps, coffee mugs. There's all kinds of, what I call tchotchkes. That's the old term for, stuff. There's all kinds of logoed branded stuff that goes in the guerrilla marketing world. But guerrilla marketing is just simply intimate, personal touch marketing that gets people interested in what you do. And it's a very effective way to start and grow a small business. And it's also a very effective way to get to meet people. So some of the things that we have, and I was thinking about this, is the welcome packets and the cards that have the directions and stuff. Those are simple things that we can use. What are some other ways that we could? What are some social media ways that we could attract people? One of the things I thought of that I don't think I don't do, which I should, is every Monday morning, those of us that have a Facebook account could get the YouTube link to one of our sermons. We could post a sermon on our Facebook page. Hey, great lesson about this. And just see how many people would watch that short video. Potentially, we could do some short video clips that we could share. Articles that we could share. Social media is a great way to have some very productive and some very non-productive comments. There's a lot of negativity. I had a conversation in a business group that I'm in. Because one of the guys that asked, how many of you in this group go to church on a regular basis? Just curious. And so a lot of guys were responding yes, and he asked, and why? So a lot of guys were responding why, and then there was a couple guys on there that started getting on there blasting religion. And then anybody that made a comment, he'd blast them. So I just asked the simple fact, if you ever noticed that very seldom do the naysayers get blasted by believers. It's normally the non-believers blasting the believers. I said, so why are you people that mean? And he disappeared. So, but I was just curious because there's a lot of interaction that you can have on social media, at the grocery store, at the coffee shop, at the restaurant, that can start this initial simple discussion. And I think that's what Paul, when he's talking to Timothy, about, that which I've taught you, teach to others. I think that was the norm. When Paul went to the synagogue, he went there because that's where people went to discuss religious things and have these conversations. So I just thought this was kind of interesting. I kind of found this connection. I thought I wanted to talk about this for a little bit. Yes, Dan.
When you're in college and you take a communications class, most people think it's a speech class, which it is. And in most cases, it's a speech class. But one of the communications classes I took that were part of my core class you have to get my degree was called interpersonal as opposed to just communication or speech class. Yes, I had speech class where you had to, give speeches, but the interpersonal communications class was more on one-on-one, in small groups, and I think that's probably, we're teaching people, or we think most of the stuff we're teaching, say, young men, is how to get behind the pulpit and speak there, as opposed to how to speak to others one-on-one, or just a small 2, 3, 4, 5 people, small groups. And it's been way too many years for me to remember what all that class was about. And of course, you turn your book in at the end of the semester, so you don't, I couldn't go back and reference that book, but it would be interesting now where I am looking back and seeing what that class and what the curriculum was about, because I think that's more along the lines of what we're talking about now. We're not talking about, how to speak to other people. Yes, you can go and take a Dale Carnegie class and how to, talk to people, influence. And there's a place for those kind of classes too. They do some wonderful things on the personal side, giving you the confidence to speak to others. But the interpersonal communication was more, reading people, and whether you continue on in that kind of vein where you're going, or say, hey, they're tuning me out, I better either shut up or move to a different topic. But part of it is, you're using your ears more than you are your mouth a lot of times too.
Yeah, because this is not all about how to win friends and influence people. This is not about using influence to get people to do what you do. This is simply to find people that have a desire to have conversations about this, and to find out, again, build a relationship. Where are they? What are they looking for? And does it fit with what we believe and what we have to offer? Yes, Joy.
Back when we used to have a booth at the fair, give away free Bibles, and invite people to Bible studies, there was an incident that caught me off guard, but I don't think now, it was a lot of years ago, and I don't think now that it would really be that unusual. And you've kind of touched on it. A guy came up to me and got about an inch from my face and started chewing me out and blasting me for I didn't do anything. He was just going off on me. I think he just saw it as an opportunity. So I'm saying that to say that may happen. And not take it personally, but kind of, you have to think about that's a possibility, because not everybody, they've got a baggage, of course, all of us do, but his was just like on the tips of his fingers, and that was a good lesson for me. Not everybody is, going to say, oh yeah, thank you, let's sit down and have a Bible study.
Yeah, you don't know what kind of reaction you're going to get. And I honestly believe one of the things that we as a church should do is to equip our members and teach them, what do you do when it goes bad? How do you de-escalate? We were at the airport I was pretty sure Cincinnati. I think we were flying somewhere, and the airplane left the gate, and there were people that walked up the gate and said, we want to get on the airplane. They're like, it just left. They're like, well, you didn't announce it. He said, we announced it. We have protocol. It's what we do. We announced it. And there was like 6 people that were mad, and they were mad, yelling at this gate agent. And his exact words were, you can yell at me all you want. The plane left. I can't open that door. As a matter of fact, you need to not yell. You need to go to the counter, talk to the people there. It's very professional, very composed. You need to talk to them. They can solve your problem. He kept yelling, I can't help you. So they turned and stormed off, and they were screaming, yelling at him. He's like, have a great day. And they were screaming, yelling, and then he snapped. He's like, fine. He's like, okay. So he took off. He got their tickets, and he's like, they'll never fly on our airline again. So he took off to, really deliver judgment on, here's what these people are doing. They shouldn't be on our airline. But he did a very good job trying to de-escalate it. And I think we need training on that as well. How do you de-escalate when something goes bad? Yes, Andrew.
I think a challenge that we may encounter or feel like it's a challenge is the things that we have to offer and talk about are, they're matters of what do you believe as far as the core of how you see yourself in the world. Why are you here? What's the meaning of life kind of questions. And it's hard to ask, the cashier or your waiter or waitress those kind of questions. Plus, they're at work. So, they're being paid to do something else right now. But what you can always do and what you can always share with someone is the lesson of your conduct and a word as to the reason for behind your conduct. I don't think it's wrong to say, "Oh, no thanks. I don't need a sample of that. I don't do that because of my faith. I don't do that because of what I believe." In Colossians chapter 3, putting on your new self. And in starting in verse 5, it says, "You put to death what is earthly in you, sexual immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, covetousness, which is idolatry." Verse 7, "In these you once too walked when you were living in them, but now you must put them all away. Anger, wrath, malice, slander, and obscene talk from your mouth." A lot of the things that you probably saw in the airport. "Don't lie to one another, seeing that you've put off the old self with its practices." Making a point of, I don't do these things, and there's a reason why I don't do these things when people see it or when the opportunity is put before you. Then in verse 12 of that same chapter, going down a bit, "Put on then, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another. If one has a complaint, forgiving each other, as the Lord's forgiven you, so also you must forgive. And above all these things, putting on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony." Verse 16 says, "Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly, teaching and admonishing one another in all wisdom." So is the lesson of your conduct, the lesson of who you are and why you are that person. That can be shared in a very brief amount of time, and that might be something that people remember, even if you can't get them to say, "Do you believe in God?" when they're trying to, ring you up at the grocery store.
Saw an odd sign last night. I went to Lowe's to get some stuff, and there's a sign on right at the checkouts counters at Lowe's. Says, "Please treat our associates respectfully. Abusive behavior, slander, profanity, all this stuff will not be tolerated. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Lowe's." And I asked the lady, I was like, "Do you guys seriously get treated bad?" She's like, "You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how mean people are." I said, "That's just crazy. Why would you yell at the cashier at Lowe's? I mean, what in the world is so pressing that you have to yell at people? I just don't get it. Yeah, our conduct makes a big difference. And I had a great conversation with a lady at the checkout at Lowe's. And as I was looking at this today, I was like, wonder what could I have sprinkled in there that would have been at the top? What could I put in there? And that's where the next lesson in this is evangelism opportunities. So this goes right into what we're going to talk about Sunday on how can we take this calling, this command, this initiative, and how can we take it and reach people? Do you know who else this works for? There's a group of people this works for that I think we don't do a very good job at using this funnel on. Anybody want to take a shot at who? Anybody? How about those that have walked away from the church? If we went and we had these people in our minds, and we prayed for them, and we occasionally reached out to them and had that discussion and said, hey, we'd love to see you again. We'd love to see you back, but not in a, oh, you've been gone a long time. But and not, that's not the bulk of our conversation. How can we take, because taking it back to the business world, it's easier to keep a customer than it is to find a new one. So it's easier for us to keep members as long as we treat them fair and treat them with love and respect and encourage them to walk in the same path that we're all walking. There's an obligation we have to our own people to rally around them when they are struggling, when they are wandering, when they are, not as committed or just not as emotionally vested as they once were. And so this works well with them also. So that's what we're going to talk about on Sunday. We're going to talk about how do we take this and what do we do with it. So now, because every one of us sit there going, yeah, that makes sense. And if I ask for a show of hands and said, how many of you would be interested in a class where we actually had tactical discussions on how we do this? I would bet almost every hand in here said, man, that would be really good. I could benefit from that. Because it's going to help us have better conversations. And you know what happens when you have better spiritual conversations? It strengthens your faith. It makes you stronger. And it encourages others. So appreciate your discussion. I mean, this was fun. I really, really appreciate your participation. Appreciate the inputs. If you have anything from lesson 9 we want to talk about, and then we will talk about chapter 10, which is the kind of the application of this. One thing I want you to think about, and we'll talk about this first thing Sunday morning, is how does the parable of the talents factor into this? Because he mentioned that in this chapter, and I want to talk about how the parable of the talents and those 3 men and that 1 master, how does that apply to our own evangelism and reaching out for others? So again, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.